Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Tech Founder Show. Happy Tech Tuesday, everyone. Tony Zayas here, joined by Andy Helko. Andy, how are you?
I'm good. Tech Tuesday, I like that. It's, Taco Tuesday, and we should start eating tacos while we do interviews.
Taco Tech Tuesday. Sounds
That's
like
right.
a plan. So very cool. You're breaking up on me a little bit here. So I think you probably asked about who we have on today. So exciting. So I think a really cool topic. We're going to hear from Maia Monell. She's the co-founder and chief growth officer at Navit. And we may be hearing from her co-founder, Erin Papworth, who's the CEO and co-founder at Navit. Depending on, I believe Erin's doing some travel today, but I want to tell you a bit about their company, and we'll bring Maia on and start talking. But really cool stuff that they're up to. I'll just read this. This is what I pulled from one of their LinkedIn pages. It says, Navit is on a mission to change the narrative around money and reduce fear. They combine adaptive digital banking products with financial health outcomes. Using best practices from health industry, think Fitbit for steps or Noom for nutrition. They provide daily activity and community incentives that empowers healthier money moves, builds confidence, and creates a community of navigators living financially free. So pretty cool topic. Let me bring Maia in. Hey, Maia, how you doing?
Hi, Tony. Hi, Andy. I'm well. How are you both doing?
Awesome. We're doing really well also.
Great. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we will see if kind of be like the suspense of the hour, right? To see if Erin will make it. You said she's traveling currently.
She's currently in the UK. For anybody that has, a co-founder, you know that it's never a dull moment. So, yes, she is very sorry, but I think her travel plans got a little hacked today, and she's the queen of travel. So she loves to get out and go places, and COVID really, hampered her style. So she's excited to be back out in the world.
Well, that's cool. Good for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just love to hear a little bit. Tell me the story. Like, what's the origin story? Where did you guys come up with the concept?
Yeah.
Let's go from there.
It's a great question, and I have to thank you both for giving the Navit kind of intro for me. I feel like I have to say that pitch just all the time, incessantly. So it's really great. And she's here. She's made it. I think she's on her phone, but surprise everyone. Erin, we're live, and we were just diving in, Erin. So perfect timing, because as our true founder, Erin developed the concept of Navit. Do you want to dive in with how you started Navit, and then we can jump in and how we got together?
Yes, and Tony and Andy, it's so good to see you. I apologize for the delayed technical difficulties in the United Kingdom over here, so please forgive me.
No problem. We totally understand. So welcome.
Thank you.
You just blame Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. They all seem to do that here anyway, so I'm part of the crowd.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So Navit really started, I spent a long time abroad. I think, we talk about this a lot, but I spent about 12 years working in sub-Saharan Africa on access to healthcare and finances for marginalized populations. And what I really realized over there is the core issue, or really thing that you're trying to address, is financial stress and financial anxiety, right? The lack of, it's a very different financial system, but at the core, people managing their finances and managing their ability to access wealth generating opportunities is really the challenge I worked on. And then when I came over to the United States back in 2000, I think I moved back in 2015, I was talking to friends of, upper middle class wealth and, mothers and husbands and, people just trying to navigate the financial system here. And I realized, oh my God, the same emotions that I was working with over there in a very different financial context are exactly the same for people here. The financial system is opaque. It's not clear. It's not designed to have your best interest in mind, right? It makes money on your missteps. And the stress and the anxiety that really is created by that really inhibits people from fully embracing and managing their finances in the healthiest way possible. So I decided, look, I did behavior change and behavioral science over there trying to address these problems. Why can't we translate those same approaches to this context, but with with technology, which is really kind of the incredible benefit. Not only is that our financial system is more robust and there's access to credit and things that really help generate wealth over here, but also we have technology that can help us scale those kind of solutions. That's a lot of talk.
And I will jump in. So Erin and I never get to be together. So again, Tony, Andy, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do this together. And I think, one of the really key kind of inflection points that Erin mentioned there is around behavior change and kind of behavioral habits, right? And I was actually working in fitness technology at the time in the Bay Area, and we were doing the exact same thing. We're figuring out how we can leverage AI to prescribe athletes with better training solutions in-app right when they needed it to help mitigate and prevent injury down the road. So we're essentially saying the same thing, right? If we see a significant population during COVID, 90% of the workforce in the US was financially stressed, and it was inhibiting their productivity, increasing absenteeism. We all know the statistics around people leaving the workforce and not coming back. We kind of addressed it in the same health issue, right? Like if financial stress is a health inhibitor, how can we change and prevent that kind of health decline out of the gate by providing people kind of daily financial tools that they can use to engage with their money, learn a little bit about it, and operationalize it in the best way for them.
It's a fascinating concept because I think there's such a that whole idea of how closely tied finances are to emotion, and to address that. So at what point, like, how did you guys meet up? And Erin, did you launch the company first, or Maia, I think you said, true founder. So did you get up started, or how did that work?
Yes.
Erin, have we still got you?
Yes, I was really to be able to have founded the company. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh no. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think we're losing you.
I founded the company before I met Maia.
Shall I dive in while she figures out her video? I think we're losing your video, Erin. You might want to try and turn it off and see if that's helpful. But essentially, Erin founded the company late in 2018.
Maia, do you want to answer that while I do this?
Yeah. So Erin founded the company late in 2018, launched the beta early 2019. And I stepped into the fold around mid 2019. We actually met where I am now in Sun Valley, Idaho. She was visiting family here. And we had both used an executive coach at different stages of our career who actually ended up connecting us. So I was doing a lot with professional athletes and coaches around their own financial stress and anxiety, just like kind of on the side as we were building out this fitness tech tool. And Erin was looking for a co-founder with growth experience, as well as, not to put words in her mouth now, but as well as some of the prescriptive and predictive analytics stuff that, I think part of the tool set that we were building over at Bridge Athletic, my former company, was really impactful to what we were trying to launch at Navit at the time. So we met, like I said, mid 2019. What I say, one coffee turned into 6 hours later. I'm sure you guys understand that more than anybody. And we decided to launch our MVP out of beta shortly thereafter. We teamed up with NBKC Bank out of Kansas City. They're an FDIC insured bank, to launch our first auto savings account, allowing users to directly deposit daily, monthly, or a time kind of set to them how much money to allocate and set aside for a future goal. So we're really we're big believers in goal-based spending, or saving rather, goal-based saving, to help ensure that you hit your financial milestones that you need to address to get you to a future of financial health.
I'm kind of curious, one, who is the ideal target? And if you don't mind, could you describe like a day in the life of them using your product? just to kind of give people
Yeah.
context of how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think because we're fintech, most people assume that we're addressing a millennial or a Z. A zillennial, as somebody once recently, we were talking to a fellow founder that called them zillennials, which I thought was funny. I think that that's certainly a big chunk of our demo, but not maybe for the reasons that you assume. I think it's in large part because these are folks first entering their big financial, their first financial opportunity or obstacle, and they're looking for tools to help them kind of navigate that in kind of a holistic way. So because we're building this around kind of behavior change tools, we operate a lot like a fitness app. I think you said that in our intro, right? Like a Noom, like a Fitbit, like a future app, right? We're trying to kind of elicit that same health-centric experience so that the user can come in every day and not just look at their balance statement, right? They're actually interacting with their transactions. They're using our transaction swiping feature to, say, analyze how a certain transaction makes them feel and how they can try to improve that emotional state over time, therefore making them more confident and more resilient to financial obstacles that they might face. And we're also selling directly to employers because there's a growing amount of employers, especially in our country, that are really focused on holistic well-being for their workforce. And they've started to realize that financial well-being is a key part of that puzzle. And they're looking for financial well-being experts and organizations and apps and tool sets to help support their workforce and address that really detrimental financial stress that I spoke to earlier.
Very cool. I going off of that a little bit, I'm kind of a behavioral psychology nerd on the side. Listen to a couple podcasts, so think I know everything. I'd be curious, what kind of nudges do you use, and how do you really translate that to tech? So how do you take this idea of behavioral psychology and translate that into technology from an operational standpoint?
That's an Erin question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now? I've moved locations. I hope this works. Yeah. So I love behavioral science. And so I'm really curious of like what you enjoy so much about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But what we do is we kind of take the approach of daily small incremental changes that you almost don't notice, 5 minutes a day, couple minutes a week, incrementally help you change a behavior and build on it. It's like on themselves to create a habit, because a habit is really something that you don't consciously think of, right? You get up in the morning and you don't even think and you make coffee, right? You get home and you take your shoes off by the door. That's truly a habit. So what we're trying to do is get people from the point of they're conscious, they're self-aware, which is the first step of any major behavior change, right? You become aware that there is something you want to change. You become aware of your financial situation. You become aware you want to start saving. You become aware you want to manage your debt. We want to get from that point, help people from that point to the point where the little habits of savings or the little habit of paying off the debt becomes almost automatic, right? And part of the beauty of technology is that you can automate a lot of things for people without having them to have to really think about it in a really daily conscious way. So for example, in the fitness world, right, you have that little Fitbit that's telling you if you got your 10,000 steps. All of a sudden, by the end of the day, after a month or two of wearing that, you check and you're already at 8,000 steps and you feel really good about it, right? Because now it's part of your consciousness that you're kind of thinking about the movement and et cetera. So from a finance perspective, it's the same thing. You start to automate, maybe it's $1 a day into a savings account, or you just start checking your transactions. One of our favorite features is that people really don't know intimately what they spend on a daily basis. So we have a feature where you can literally go in and use like a Bumble or Tinder swipe, like swipe left, swipe right on your daily transactions on the last 24 hours of your transactions. And you can rate it, happy, sad, neutral. But what that does is it gets people really intimately engaged with what they spend on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And that helps them incrementally shift what percentage of their transactions are serving them, what percentage feel like they are really are taking away from their financial health. And we can kind of correlate that with the insights and the nudges, to your point, that we can set up. So there's so much fun stuff. I could geek out for a long time, but I love to hear more about what you like about behavioral science.
Well, I was just going to say, I can see a lot of people swiping where they're unhappy about, food and shelter and really happy about like booze and entertainment. So I don't know if that shows naturally
Or the
what we should.
opposite. Yeah, no, or the opposite. People feel guilty about the entertainment and like, not, neutral about utilities. We see a lot of neutrality. But the thing about technology too that you can do is then you can show people trends, which is really profound. So it's, maybe 1 month you're good, you've had a good month, your income feels steady, you're doing okay, but then the next month is a rough month and kind of everything feels painful. So you can start to see trends over time of or to your point, you go out hard on a Friday night, you feel guilty on Sunday when you're looking back at those expenses, right? So it's a fascinating kind of connection between your psychology and actually how you spend money.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I was just going to add, I think the insight, that the insight is what really gets you from behavior change to behavior norm, right? Where you can start to actually reflect on how you're addressing certain scenarios and your spending, saving, even wealth generation, and how you can start to kind of move the needle incrementally towards something that you really want to achieve. And I think that that's also where that goal-based savings, even if it's automated, we're still trying to create kind of a habit of checking in to see how much cash you have kind of set aside, how you can leverage that against something else, how you can start to actually have a more enjoyable and engaging relationship with your money every single day, which is a whole, I think a big part of those like kind of incremental or those small micro habits. Small micro habits are kind of redundant, but micro habits around your money, because I think that, so many people think that the only kind of habit they can have is a negative one, right? Where it's like you start to create that paralysis around just checking your bank statement. But there's so much more to engage with.
Yeah, I always find it interesting with like behavioral psychology. You asked what I kind of find interesting, what they see of like nudges that in letters to get people to pay taxes, it's not threatening you with going to jail or fees. It's 8 out of 10 of your neighbors have paid their taxes, so it's that peer pressure, or it's going into a store and there's flowers first to kind of set your emotions about the freshness. And I think about finance and the opportunity to like set somebody's mindset before they make a purchasing decision, or to say, this is how much your people like you have saved, and you're just
I don't know, Andy, did we lose you?
Break up a little bit again. Yeah.
Can you guess what he was going to say on that one, Tony?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where he's going. Andy, you there? Well, let's. I was gonna ask and go back to just learn a bit about, if the outcome for Navit is to get your users creating habits. What are some of the things you're doing to get part of the habit is using Navit?
Erin, you're on mute.
Yes, and of course, the horde of children just came home. So here we are. And the question was, sorry, the question was the behavioral. You cut out just at the beginning of that question.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear just a bit about what are you guys doing to get the users? Obviously, an outcome of using Navit is to have them create new behaviors. But what are some of the things you're doing to create part of their behavior is to use Navit and engage with it and come back to it and continue to use?
Great question. Yes. So there are two things I think that are unique to us in a financial health perspective and kind of fintech, is that we actually give people kind of a template of what is considered basic financial health by, kind of the gold standard by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or other kind of financial health experts, the Urban Institute, Financial Health Network. So we give people a roadmap that kind of helps them gauge. I think to your point earlier, it's like benchmarking, understanding what is considered healthy, and then how you can get there. But also, we're really driven by community, and I think that's something that hasn't been well developed yet in the financial space. It's really hard because money's sensitive, and we all have different paths and different experiences. But at the end of the day, as adults, we're all, by virtue of the fact we're adults, we're navigating money and we're navigating the financial system. So we've been really focused on how do we create an environment where we can kind of deconstruct the financial narrative and create community where people can learn from each other. There's not competition or judgment. It's really just like, how are you spending money? How are you thinking about money? How am I doing that? How's my life affect finances, my finances, and how can I learn from you? And that's been something that is highly engaging for people. People really like seeing, for example, and it's in an anonymous way. You don't have to, bare your soul or say your name, but how are other people, what goals are people setting up, right? Oh, they set up a $200 goal for their kids camp, or they set up a $3,000 goal to go to Greece next year, right? So what are people saving for? How are they spending their money? We call them kind of money diaries, where you can kind of, those swipes, you can post those swipes. So see, oh, someone spent, they spent $100 on a T-Mobile bill. How did they get that? So, my T-Mobile bill is like $150. How did they get it that cheap? And you can start a dialogue around that. So that's been really engaging, and people have really enjoyed that. And I think changing the narrative around money just to demystify it and not make it something that comes with judgment is a key feature for us.
So what did the MVP look like when you first took this to market? I'm curious to hear.
Oh man. Beta or yeah, oh man. Well, we were targeting.
Really, it was a beta.
Yeah, it was beta. When we first brought something to market, it was definitely a beta. We didn't have the NBKC bank partnership yet. It was a traditional kind of personal financial management tool. So you could aggregate accounts, you could deconstruct your budgets, you could create custom categories for your budgets. You could kind of engage in certain ways, like we would post our blog articles on the app. We've kept that. So there were kind of bits and pieces of the financial literacy components to the app that were actually there in V1. And, we were targeting the group that Erin and I felt like we could really kind of understand best out of the gate, which were millennial women. We kind of drove the messaging around that audience because we figured that was a group that we understood really needed a tool to help mitigate financial stress. And we felt like we knew how to build for them out of the gate, and then the rest would come. And so when we, expanded and moved into kind of the V2, V3, with the bank partnership and all of these other kind of community components, and really built the app that it is today, we were able to expand that narrative to make it really gender neutral and all inclusive. But we wanted to start by serving a population that had been left out.
Ironically, Tony, you asked about community, or I mentioned community in my response to you. And we had this initial, because this is about learning, right, and building. We started with an initial community feed that we kind of imagined like people could post about what they spent money on. And people loved the concept, but they hated posting pictures. Right. So it was really a good a lesson for us of like, people wanted to talk about money. They wanted to talk about how they spend it. They give itineraries of what they, where they went and what they spent their money on, but they did not want to post. They didn't want the pressure of having like an Instagram type post where it needs to be beautiful and perfect. Like this is a messy conversation. Right. So it was a really, that initial beta community was a really good lesson for us, and like what people actually wanted to talk about in a social network around money.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So you mentioned the bank partnership. How did that come to fruition?
Oh, Tony, we then lost you. But I think you're asking just how we got NBKC on board.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's an Erin win. Erin.
Yes, we applied. Actually, NBKC is a great kind of leading fintech bank. So a lot of banks, and maybe I'm explaining too much about the fintech industry, but in the last 5 to 6 years, it's really a new thing for banks to really embrace relationships with fintechs. And NBKC has been a leading one out of Kansas City to that really embrace the idea that banks and fintechs have a very kind of symbiotic relationship. And so they had an accelerator program where they would it was about 75 days where you go to Kansas City and you'd be fully immersed in banking, because a lot of most fintech founders that I know are not bankers, and there's so many complications with regulation and, just all the ways and systems around banking. So they have this great I don't think they do it anymore, but they had this great accelerator where they would accept 5 fintechs, put in a little bit of small investment, and then you'd come get this deep dive into the banking world. So we did that in 2019, like fall 2019.
Going off that a little, I'm curious how you guys have used accelerators and mentors and those other types of things.
Yeah,
That's a great
question.
We have a lot of debates around that. Yes.
We I think we've kind of there are certainly times and places for accelerator programs. I think certainly when we were youngest, we needed, we bootstrapped Navit up until recently, so we needed a lot of the kind of free-ish support. A lot of accelerators you actually do have to pay for, which founders are often surprised by. And I think that they're certainly strong so long as you find the right accelerator for your category and for what you want out of it, right? If you're looking for a network, like talk to past founders that have gone through the accelerator, like really ensure that they have a network that they're not just promising, but they can deliver on too. I think that that's really key for the accelerator conversation. And kind of same with mentors. We've been really lucky that we've had a lot of mentors in the space that have wanted to champion our work and kind of see our opportunity with behavior-based underwriting, and a lot of other implications that Nav.it can really dive into once we see scale. But I think also a lot of mentors can be all talk and no execution too. We've been really lucky that we haven't really, by and large, haven't had that experience, but we certainly know a lot of founders that have been kind of, disheartened by the lack of engagement that certain mentors or advisors. We have a really strong advisory board. We have to lean on that in our space. Neither Erin nor I come from traditional banking. So it was really key for us, especially as we geared up for a seed round raise, that we had people on the advisory board that had, really demonstrated success in our field before, whether or not it be fintech or traditional financial services. But a lot of people also just want to be on a board and share their name and kind of connect with you because you're doing something cool, but maybe for reasons that feed their own ego and not the success of the business. So we get this question a lot by other fellow founders because they see that we have a pretty robust advisory board, but it certainly took a lot of time to cultivate and to ensure that we were getting the right people to the table.
Since we do talk to a lot of founders, can you talk about what that cultivation looked like and how you did it for other people that are, trying to figure that out? Where did you go and look? Were there ways that you evaluated anything?
Yeah.
I think Maia has a.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, Erin, go ahead.
I have a really interesting skill set. We complement each other really well, and what she's really good at and what I'm really good at and how we kind of can delegate. And I think we really kind of strategically looked at mentors and advisors to see what were the missing links that we felt we really needed. What's interesting about that is it also changes over time, which is it's a complicated thing to manage, right? What you need at the very beginning of a startup actually kind of shifts over time when you start to get post seed, going towards Series A, that, those needs and skill sets shift. But it doesn't mean that the people at the beginning aren't really useful. It's just, the best advisors that we know and that we have cultivated know where their strengths are and what they can bring to the table. And that it's just been really an amazing experience to cultivate that relationship with those advisors and be really honest with them and have them be really honest with us about what their skill sets are, what they bring to the table, and what we need. Half the time you don't exactly know what you need, and having good, people who have done it before can kind of tell you what the next 2 steps are and how they can benefit you. That it's usually, I think one thing that I would say that I learned my lesson really painfully at the beginning was I expected everyone else knew better than I did at the beginning, right? When in reality, everyone has an opinion and your business
better than anyone else, right? Like, I mean, still, you should listen, you should definitely have humility, and there are a lot of people that can bring you experience, but at the end of the day, you're the one, it's your business, and you're the one making the hard decisions, and you can listen to all these opinions, but you have to do what's right for you. And that was a good lesson to learn over time.
Yeah, I actually think we've heard that from a couple founders, is that you have to, they overestimate the knowledge and everything else of mentors. And so that, there's some humility that goes into it.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in their own narrative, like that mentor's narrative and their success story, and like replicating their model and doing everything that they did. But also, like, frankly, if you're working with a mentor, half the time they built and sold or exited successfully a business several years before your interaction, or at least a few, right? Like, the market has completely evolved within even that 6-month period of when you've met them to when they, exited. So I think that that's also something to really keep in mind, like, especially we see that all the time, right? We're in still a pretty nascent industry, even though it's exploded and there are competitors everywhere and X, Y, and Z. It's still very new. Like, regulators still don't really know what to do with us. And because of that, I mean, a lot of folks really latch on to the early success stories, but it was a different road. I mean, look at the inflated seed rounds that we see now, right, in our space. Like, that wasn't always the case. And, I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed by past success stories to try and, I mean, Erin and I are both very competitive. I'm maybe a little bit more competitive than Erin to try and, make your own business 10 times as successful, when really you should be focused on stabilizing it and growing it conservatively, and really focusing on your own KPIs and your own objectives for the business. Sorry, I have a dog chewing a bone right below me. She's a puppy, so I always have to apologize to everybody.
Yeah, I'm dealing with a puppy here too, so I know all about that.
Yeah.
You mentioned competitors just a moment ago, and I would love to hear a bit about, in this space that's so new. You said regulators don't even know what to do with you guys. Interesting, right? And constant evolution of this space. How do you guys stay on top of things? Not to even mention what I'm really interested in, how do you future-proof the business? So what are you doing to stay ahead of the curve and really, really solidifying your space in the market?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. Yeah, and
You want to go
feel free
first?
to add after this.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of things from our side. Keeping on top of the regulation and what's happening kind of in Washington is really important. And that changes with administrations, right? So we just had a recent changeover in administrations, and fintech is here to stay. And fintech has really proven itself in a lot of ways during this COVID crisis, because of the way, basically fintech was able to respond with the stimulus checks and the distribution of these support, like unemployment and the stimulus checks to the population. But it's still, fintech has really been like we call it the first phase of fintechs, right? It's really only been one phase of really successful, like the Chimes of the world and the kind of, high valuation fintech phase one. And the impact to society is still not evident. Like, the big promise of fintech was more inclusion, better access, lower rates, etc. And it still isn't entirely proven that fintech has been able to do that. And so regulators are watching that. And it's just important that we really feel like we're the second phase that's really starting to look at, okay, what is the social impact of my model, and what am I doing that shifts the narrative and that creates a business model that's also in the best interest of the consumer, and thinking about how we deal with banking structures and fees and the management and the way that it works. And so that's a current and really new conversation that we stay up on by trying to participate in those conversations, by watching what the CFPB is doing and what kind of the thinkers of this world are thinking about. And frankly, like, you're saying, how do we kind of bulletproof this model? It's a new model. So I think for us, really making sure we're as innovative as possible and leading the conversation. We talk a lot about anti-design bias in AI. You know, AI is a whole new frontier right now in the financial industry, and we really are at the fore of thinking through how are we careful with our data and think about making it like declassifying it and understanding what is design biased with AI and with the delivery of financial services through AI mechanisms. And so all that's it's a tall order, but it's a really exciting time to be part of those narratives and those conversations because they're completely new.
Yeah, and if I may just add to that, and I obviously completely agree. But I think also in terms of bulletproofing the business, we really think of ourselves as this new category, like Erin said, this new phase of fintech, but also kind of a side category of the new phase, right? Where we are trying to model the business as closely as we can to successful digital health products, because those are the ones that have really allowed the consumer to evolve their understanding of their own health obstacle, right? Like to really evolve their fitness routine, their nutritional routine. Like, what are the things that have actually made a healthier consumer? Well, the industry that we can look to when we ask that question is, of course, digital health, right? So if we can start to create a conversation within financial services to say, well, if you really care about your end user, right? If you really care about the health of your consumer, and financial stress and anxiety is an impediment to the consumer's overall health, then how are you addressing that health barrier and solving for it? You're doing it through things like what Erin and I have been talking about, through changing financial behavior, and not just at kind of the macro level of, of course, getting more money into that and making money more accessible. Certainly that's an end goal, but also helping people kind of overcome smaller obstacles because they haven't been involved in the system that has really cared to educate them, to inform them, to build their confidence up, to just build up their kind of traditional financial fitness. Those are those measurements of creating an emergency fund, like we've talked about, making sure that you spend less than you earn, right? Paying off high interest debt. Like, we don't really live in a system, especially in our own country. It's kind of ironic that Erin's in the UK right now, right? Especially in our own country, where we like live on credit. Nowhere else in the world does anybody really live on credit to the degree that Americans do. And so I think that's one of, there's certainly a time and a place for credit. I'm a huge fan of rewards cards, but there's a time and a place, and there's a type of consumer that can activate that. But if you are maybe less healthy based on some of our own measurements, and you need to shut off high interest debt first, and you have all these other obstacles to overcome first, then you need to handle those before you work on other wealth generating opportunities. And I think that the best way to address this kind of, health crisis in our own country around financial services is to change consumer behavior.
So for our founders out there, and we've been talking about competitors, what I'm interested in is decision making. So how much do you pay attention to what competitors are doing? How much do you listen to your audience? How much do you listen to mentors? And how do you make decisions about, where you're going as a company, especially from a product perspective?
It's a great question. We have, again, I'm the most competitive maybe on the entire team, so I feel like I should answer this first. We have a healthy list of competitors on both the B2C side and the B2B2C side, as everybody probably knows if you're familiar with fintech at all. But I think, there comes a point where you just kind of have to like let them lie, like realize that they're doing certain things. They're providing different digital banking solutions to a specific type of population that they want to address. And we really see ourselves as one of the only actors addressing kind of the holistic financial experience, right? So when we go in to service, say, a new employer population who might have a demographic ranging from an 18-year-old making $20,000 a year to a 50 plus exec making 7 figures, maybe, we can actually provide a solution, maybe not the 7-figure exec, but we can provide a solution for the 6-figure one, right? We can provide a solution for everybody across the workforce because we're focused on that fundamental habit and kind of health change, right? Mitigating financial stress is something that, as Erin said earlier, every adult experiences, right? It doesn't matter how good you are with your money, you experience it in different levels. And then that's not to say that we think that we're going to address every single person in the United States over 18. But I think that we really feel strongly that if we're providing a solution that does good by the consumer, then there'll always be a space for Navit. We're not, I think it's so easy. It's not easy. It's such a new industry that there are so many issues to uncover and to solve for. And so long as we kind of stay true to ourselves, kind of continue to service our end consumer in the best way that we know how, for the pain point that we know that they're coming to us with, we feel like there'll always be, hopefully a space for Navit and across the landscape. Erin.
Yeah, I second everything that. Yeah, and Andy, I think you're so right. I had to learn early not to get distracted by competitors. Like I think that you can learn from what they're doing, and again, people are doing innovative things in our industry, so you learn like, oh, you can do that, or oh, they're doing this kind of service. I wonder if I can talk to MBKC about doing something like that. So you're definitely watching and learning, but not getting distracted and trying to compete. I mean, you have to stay true to, and to your point, really focusing on the end, like who the client that you are serving, that consumer that you are serving. If you stay true to that and keep your eye on it, but don't get distracted by it, I think that's really how we approach it. And you also said decision making, and I think I cut out when you asked about kind of how Maia and I met. One huge, I am just so grateful for, an advantage that I feel like we have is that we have a team. This co-founding team really allows us to bat decisions with each other and be, have a thought partner that challenges you when you go to propose a solution, and to someone to just work through these issues with. And I am incredibly grateful that I met Maia when I did, and that I have someone that can be a thought partner when we make decisions.
That's great. To shift gears a little bit, I always love hearing, especially from like super innovative founders like the two of you. You guys are in, again, a competitive space. It's a new category that's out there. I'd love to hear about the approach in marketing. How do you, what have been some of the lessons learned? What have been some of the challenges and struggles? And where have you guys seen traction? What's worked for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can certainly answer that one, Tony. We have tried a lot of different avenues because our demo does skew younger, at least on the B2C side, because again, we're a consumer fintech. We have certainly tried a pretty aggressive strategy across kind of the digital landscape, both from an organic and paid. We do, since we bootstrapped up until recently, we do have a nominal ad spend, as any, startup founder can appreciate. And we're pretty aggressive on ad stores. We've gotten really kind of competitive and effective with kind of universal Google landscapes. I think one of our biggest wins in the last year and a half or so is leveraging our organic content to serve the end consumer, and frankly leveraging it to convert them as well. So we often kind of say we have two categories, right? We have folks that come in for because they found us organically through those literacy pieces. They kind of have read maybe a couple of blogs, they've seen us on a certain social channel, they're starting to trust the brand, and then they convert, right? Compared to the person that might have already tried a competitor, or might have tried, or is a little bit more familiar with fintech and converted because they're looking for an app specifically like ours. Most of consumers, be it younger or older, don't still really understand what fintech is. And so it's a really great opportunity for us to kind of leverage we think our pretty authentic brand within the space to prove that, we're going to be somebody that cares about their overall health and can build that kind of customer loyalty that I think financial services by and large struggles to do. I think one of the North Stars there and how we kind of focus in on our brand and our brand promise to the end consumer is to make sure that we're always speaking in an inclusive way to everybody. So we never want somebody to feel like they're left out of Navit's narrative or, Navit's language. the imagery that we use, everything A to Z is really, I think, high quality and purposeful. And I think that that's helped us attract more users organically than other brands in the space.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I second that. And what I would add is I think that we have had a very interesting, and I don't, you guys interview a lot of founders, so there's a part of this that's tenacity, resilience, grit, and there's a little bit of timing and luck. And
Yeah.
for us, COVID would have been a better time to shake up the narrative and have people have this horrible experience, kind of throw it in people's faces that, oh, we better start talking about financial health, like this is a real issue. And we have some of our population that saw the 2008 crisis and kind of were coming into adulthood around that. So now a lot of them have lived through 2 of these major crises, and all of a sudden it's just like, we can't avoid this. And so it has helped our narrative a lot, saying, hey, is there a way to think about financial health and change this narrative, and not just come at it from a banking perspective, but think about it from a human perspective and a psychological perspective. So timing and luck and grit and resilience have worked in our favor.
Yeah, pretty much all of that.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. I would like to hear a little bit about I think, Andy, are you unmuted? All right, I'll let you ask the next one, but just wanted to hear a little bit about the Navit team, and a little bit about what the culture looks like there at Navit.
Oh,
it's a great question. We've never gotten answers. I appreciate that question. Nobody ever asks about the rest of the team, and they deserve all the credit. So yeah.
We do. We have an amazing team. And one thing that I think Maia and I just once again, got lucky, is that we were already a remote team. Maia's based in Idaho. I'm based in Washington. So we were incredibly lucky to have already have an infrastructure that when COVID, shut down and remote, we were already working from home. Mostly, some people were going into WeWorks and stuff, but remote work was already kind of natural in our organizational culture. But it did, Maia and I were very strategic in the first 3 to 4 months, I think, during that kind of shutdown, to think about how do we cultivate community and organizational culture in a time when we know people are highly stressed. And it's funny because they probably were stressed before. It was just like this intense moment. So we've done a lot of things. Like we instituted, we have a happy hour, once a month. That's really Maia mentioned she's competitive. I'll admit to some competitive nature. So we have these great, epic company-wide games that we play, and every department's responsible. And then we did a wellness day, which is really important to us too, because we're health and wellness focused. So we're trying to kind of keep people's pulse on, and help them self-reflect on when they're burnt out and when they kind of need a break, and how we facilitate those dialogues. And then of course we have company-wide. I love this. My opposite day. Maia's gonna laugh, but we do this, we really create this environment where we can challenge ourselves to think differently. And I'm inspired by Pixar, who did this at the beginning of their epic, success, where we have company-wide open, we call it opposite day, where you take one of our features or one of the things, our initiatives, and we have everyone come with a counter argument of why this is not a good idea, or what's the counter, what's the possibility, or the possible negative outcomes we're not thinking about, or secondary consequences. And it's been an incredible environment and experience to have people really come with, feel safe, and come with these counter arguments to think kind of differently than what we kind of are doing on a daily basis, and opening up that dialogue and intellectual debate. And so we're across the whole country. We have DC, Boston, Florida, Idaho, Washington. Am I missing a state, Maia? I think
you covered it. I mean, we have some awesome interns. We've been really lucky. Yeah, Colorado too. We've been really lucky with intern classes that actually we have a lot of interns that come to us for the summer and then just never leave, which is great. We've actually converted a few full-time hires, so they're also kind of spread across mainly the Northeast. But I think too, Erin, not to interject or jump on your point there, but I think one of the things that we really do feel passionate across, like the half day wellness day once a month, or the happy hour once a month, or that opposite day, like to create some kind of consistency and like levels of kind of cross department support. So we do all hands, right? We do all the normal things, but we also do fun things like we have silly Slack channels, right, where people can just share what's like top of mind, or if they've read a good journal article. It doesn't have to be anything to do with finances or fintech, right? One of our head of community and education created a Slack channel that's called Word Vomit, which literally, if any kind, this is really on the brand stuff, but sometimes it bleeds into product, where we have a really good idea, or like Simone Biles said something really awesome today, and we want to kind of punt off of that and create kind of a micro campaign. Like, I think we really, Erin and I are only two human beings. We have an amazing COO and president, Nauzer Dadachanji, who also comes from, he led iShares, he comes from BlackRock. He's got kind of demonstrated chops in the industry too. But the three of us are really working to create an environment where people, like, if they have a good idea, and so long as it has some kind of business, it meets some business objective that we're going after, that they can run with that idea, like no matter if they're an entry level or they've been with us for a while. I think one of the kind of key cultural components is a profound like value and trust of everybody on the team, whether or not they be a contractor, an intern, or a full-time.
I would ask, just to continue the discussion here, talking about team, because it sounds like you guys got an incredible team and really cool culture. How do you guys find the right people? I mean, hiring is something that's always a challenge. It's particularly challenging right now. But how do you find the right people from both a skill fit, but then also from a cultural perspective? What are some of the things that you guys have done that you've seen, you've been able to draw on the right people?
It's a really good question. And I think we're constantly learning and evolving. One thing that we have had incredible luck with is we have had a couple of our staff that were kind of short-term contractors or interns, and got to know them, and then we're able to convert them into full-time salaried individuals. So that's been incredibly helpful, because you already obviously know how to work with them. They understand the culture. They get to know you and kind of, not necessarily meaning to, but in a kind of trial basis. And then you can, and that's been strategic to some degree. It's also been the nature of a startup where, you're doing short-term contracts, then you do another round of funding, and then you're able to hire full time. So you have this kind of, list of people that are already kind of waiting to be hired. You have identified as a possible full-time hire. I think from a dev perspective, we've been lucky to have the development resources. I think recruiting development is really hard because it's in such demand, and you are competing with the Amazons and the Googles of the world that can pay, for three, a lot of zeros that we can't. But so you're also attracting people that are really motivated by your mission, right? So you can, you give the equity with a lower salary, and people who are willing to do that. I think it's been interesting. Also, I go back to COVID, but there's been this shift, I feel like, in the last 6 to 9 months, of people saying, wait a minute, I can do what I like. I can work from home and I can do what I'm passionate about, right? And finding maybe being in the hamster wheel isn't as necessary, or if people have done it, by the time they're in their 30s, they've kind of gotten to a period in their life where they're more willing to take risks and do things that they're passionate about. And something like our business and our mission and our company mission is so front and center that you attract people that your mission resonates with. And we continue to be lucky. It's still always a challenge, but I think I think cultivating and ensuring people are mission aligned is kind of the first step in identifying talent.
Yeah, completely agree.
That's great. So I'd like to hear just a little bit. We got a couple minutes here. What is the let's say, what does the next 12 months to 3 years look like for Navit? So what's on the plate for this next year, and then what's the next vision beyond that?
The world is our oyster. Maya, I'll let you.
Yes, exactly. Sure. Yeah. The next 12 months, we're really focused on two key things. That's engagement, which we've all spoken a little bit about. So, ensuring that we're creating an experience that users and we call our consumers navigators, that navigators enjoy and that they enjoy past kind of their traditional experience with, say, their bank's app, right? So that they're coming in a few times a week, they're improving their behaviors incrementally, they're creating that micro habit, right? They're creating those small goals, they're like seeing themselves improve as a financial consumer is really top of mind for us. So Erin, of course, is leading the charge on the product side. And then in my side of the house, and my hat is really focused on traction. So both traction, of course, kind of continuing to excel in the B2C landscape. And, I spoke a little bit about our digital marketing efforts. Everybody knows that as you throw more ad dollars to the fire, you get more in return. That just seems to be how the digital landscape works at scale. But like I said, we're really focused on creating that kind of engaging content too, that is helping to educate the consumer and meet them where their challenges are. And I think, something that we haven't spoken a ton about, but what we're really focused on in the next 12 months and certainly in the next 3 years even, is traction in the employer space. So proving that financial well-being is an integral part of your holistic health and well-being strategy for employees. So that is really, kind of one of our key pillars right now is if we can offer the same and, frankly, an enhanced level of service to you as an employee, and you don't have to pay for it. Your employer can pay for it, and your health, your insurance provider from an employer standpoint can pay for Navit. Then we've really done our jobs, because we've been able to meet and reach as many people as we can who might otherwise not have been able to pay for Navit or to leverage it in a certain way. So we're really focused on proving out that model and that employee benefit, employer work perk kind of space. And in the next 12 to really 18 months, that also means that we're gearing up, I should say, for a Series A raise in early 2022, which is really exciting and will certainly help fuel a lot of those efforts around traction and engagement and product opportunity thereafter. And Erin and I always say that in 3 to 5 years, we really hope that our financial well-being score and our kind of path to behavior change as it pertains to financial health and financial stress is starting to be used and leveraged by consumers as an additional underwriting tactics, right? So just like you have your FICO score, we believe that the next wave of underwriting needs to include behavior change, and behavior-based underwriting has already been proven out in the health insurance category with a whole host of digital health tools. And we really hope to be kind of on the forefront and pioneering that effort in financial services.
That's really cool. That's some exciting stuff you guys have coming up.
A lot to do.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll wrap up in a second with the last question we like to ask, but where can our viewers find out more, learn about you guys, and actually, see what Navit's all about?
Well, first and foremost, you can download our app. You can sign up from wherever you download an app from, so an Android, Google Store, Apple Store, and it's just nav.it, Navit, and you should find it there. You can also follow us on all of the channels. I'm even gearing up a TikTok strategy, so please be patient and kind to me as I do that. But most of our channels are Let's Navit, LETS NAVIT. And then, of course, from our website, it's also the kind of host of all of our blog content. We host our own podcast. All the good stuff also lives there, and that's navitmoney.com. So NAVITMONEY.com.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me. My final question is always, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give?
Oh, God. I've been thinking about this one, and I feel like I've changed my answer. Yeah, Erin, do you have one?
Well, it depends on how much. I'm old enough, Andy, that I think of how younger do I want to go? 16, 20, 25? But I think I would definitely tell myself that not to sweat the little stuff. Like the perfection isn't isn't real. And if you get distracted by the little things, you don't actually see the bigger picture. And how do you kind of, one of my best lessons learned was I was very deep and deeply emotionally attached to one of my first major jobs where I was running a multi-million-dollar project. I had 130 staff. I was very emotionally attached to my success and the success of this thing. And there were just factors that were way outside my control that were not, I could only do what I could control. I could only do as much as I could, my sphere of influence. And I really had to learn, that was my best lesson, was to detach from my self-worth being attached to the ultimate outcome and focus on what I could control, the things I needed to learn. I needed to learn management. There's so many skill sets that I could build, and and detach my self-worth from the ultimate outcome. And that has served me well in a lot of other environments, like a startup, where there's only so much you can control. You can show up, do your best, and then sometimes there's a little bit that's left to fate.
I love that.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. I think mine, and I kind of always come back to this, and I can't remember who once said it. Somebody said it recently too on like some social media channel, but I think it's relevant, especially to a founder, which is to learn what giving yourself grace looks like. And I think that's, we're all, if you're a tech founder, if you're any kind of founder, you're certainly pretty resilient. You're certainly pretty competitive. I might be on the higher end of that spectrum, but everybody, you've got some grit and determination in you. But I think that also kind of fuels some of the negative components of what a founder mentality can look like. For instance, thinking that you really thrive on stress. I love people that say that. They're like, oh, I thrive on stress. I'm so great at stress. And I'm like, okay, well, nobody's really great at stress to an extent, right? Like, yeah, there's a healthy degree of stress that can fuel you. If you're one of those like last minute doers and you knock it out of the park, that's amazing. But at the same time, recognizing, and I'm sure even Erin's probably like internally laughing because I'm definitely a culprit of this, but figuring out, when too much stress is starting to really impede your productivity and your own grit and your own capacity and your like ability to lead a team, right? And to reflect on that and figure out, what does giving yourself more grace look like, right? If it means to scale back that time or to, prioritize something different that day or even go for a walk. I'm, again, a fitness freak because of my last career and always have been. I've always been an athlete. Like, if it means getting up first thing in your morning and going for a hike or going for a run or going to the gym or doing something active that, you can control that brings you joy, but also not getting yourself up at 4 a.m. to do it, right? Like not every founder is working from 4 to 4, or 4 to midnight. It's just not, nobody's doing that. And if people are telling you that that's what you should do to be a founder, then they're lying to you because nobody can survive on that level of stress. And I think it's really important to realize that you are just one human being, and to be your most productive, best self, and you need to be good to yourself first.
Awesome. That's very cool.
Fantastic.
Very much appreciated. So thank you both for joining us here today. I want to encourage everyone to go to Navit and check out the app and see what it does. Really cool. I love the concept. I'm going to check it out myself here when we get off. But thank you. We really appreciate you both, Maia, Erin, spending your time here with us today. And with that, guys, take care, everyone. We appreciate you tuning in. We will see you again next week. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Andy.
Thank you.